I am a huge fan of the current aftermarket controller setup for retro gaming and modern gaming. Back in the day, if you had an aftermarket controller or a third-party controller, they were absolute garbage. Things like Mad Catz made me afraid to buy anything third-party or aftermarket for a very, very long time. For the most part, companies like Retro Fighter and 8-Bit Do have supplied excellent controllers that I use all the time, especially here in club and at home in my personal collection. There's been one company I've been really hesitant to recommend, and I still won't, mainly because all their stuff has been very inconsistent with me, and that has been RetroBit. I especially bought this very expensive Genesis controller for my wife at home for her Genesis, and it didn't work after a while for no reason. The buttons stopped responding, or they do the opposite things what they're supposed to do, or sometimes it wouldn't work at all. So I did everything I could. I pulled it apart, cleaned everything up, pulled the battery, updated the controller, I updated the dongle that receives it on the Genesis itself, and still nothing. So I was ready to throw this thing away, and I thought to myself, let me bring this into school and see what happens. And sure enough, it works just fine now. And I'm not really sure why it's working. It would not work on our other Genesis, and if it did, the buttons didn't make sense. Same thing with this RetroBit controller for the SNES. It works inconsistently. Sometimes no problems, but like yesterday in Game Club, kids couldn't get this thing to connect. I took it apart, cleaned it, nothing was wrong with it. It's in perfectly fine shape, it hasn't been dropped, but yet it just doesn't work sometimes. I have had a miserable experience with RetroBit controllers, and I don't recommend them, but it could just be me. Does anyone else have issues with RetroBit?